On the last day of submitting our college applications, Emily Carter suddenly changed her top choice to match Ryan Kim's, the campus heartthrob who transferred in sophomore year and seemed to make every girl in school forget how to think straight. When her friend teased her, "What about your childhood sweetheart? Didn't you and James agree to go to Caltech together 6 years ago?" Emily just paused for a second, then laughed it off, saying casually, "Oh, James Walker. Don't worry. He's got my login and password. If he sees I changed my application, he'll just follow me. He can't live without me anyway." I stood behind the wall, hearing every word, the cold air of the restaurant creeping up my back like a ghost. I didn't walk in. I didn't confront her. I just turned and left, acting like I never heard anything, acting like her words hadn't just torn the foundation of my last 6 years apart. That day, I didn't log into the system again. I didn't check her application. And I sure as hell didn't change mine. What she didn't know was that while she was chasing mountains and oceans for some guy she barely knew, I also had a sky I had always wanted to fly toward. My dream, the one I had built since I was a kid who first learned about airplanes from my dad before he passed, was never just for her. We used to talk about going to Caltech together like it was our shared destiny. Our families sat down together at the table 2 days before the deadline, filling in the form like it was a contract between 2 futures, 2 lives. But now, she changed everything, unilaterally, without a word to me. It was at that same dinner where her friends laughed, sipping sodas and gossiping over hot pot, that one of them asked, "But how do you know James will even check it again?" Emily scoffed like it was the funniest thing in the world. "Oh, please. He'll look at it 100 times. I don't even know him. I'm scared I'll mess something up, and he'll get assigned a different major. I'm just saving him from himself." Another friend piped up, "That's a little cold, isn't it? You didn't even tell him." Emily sighed like she was being inconvenienced. "I really did forget, okay? Besides, what would I even say? That I changed my future for a boy? If James finds out it's because of Ryan, he'll throw a fit. You know how he is." The room laughed again. Someone commented on how Ryan was from a complicated family and needed someone like Emily. Someone else said James was always kind of messy and obsessed with studying, not cool like Ryan. They even joked about how I'd probably give up my aerospace major just to stick close to her. I stood outside like an idiot, feeling my palms dig into my jeans, feeling like the air had frozen around me. I wanted to barge in, grab Emily by the shoulders, and yell, "Is this how little I matter to you?" But I didn't. My legs wouldn't move. I stood there for God knows how long before walking away, dragging my shadow through the city like a broken limb. That night, I locked myself in my room and cried like a fool. I tried to understand how it had all changed so fast. Why would she throw away everything we worked for? I had loved aviation since I was a kid. We had studied together, sacrificed together, pushed ourselves through every late night and weekend class, aiming for the same dream school. And now she was willing to burn it all down because of a guy who said he didn't want to go to college alone. And the worst part? She didn't even have the decency to tell me. Was I really so disposable to her? What about that kiss under the stars on my 18th birthday? The way her fingers trembled when she touched my cheek. The way she looked at me like I was her whole world, even if just for a second. Was that just a drunken impulse I misread as love? Maybe. Maybe the joke's on me. I always thought I was following our shared dream, but maybe I was just the sidekick in hers. We'd gone to the same kindergarten, elementary, middle, and high school. Everyone, our teachers, our parents, even Emily herself, just assumed I'd always be by her side. But nobody asked me what I wanted. Nobody asked why I wanted Caltech. Nobody knew that, aside from Emily, I had my own reasons. My dad died in an aircraft accident when I was 10. Ever since, I've wanted to understand what drove him to take that risk. What kind of love for the sky made a man put his life on the line? That question burned in me more than any crush ever could. I opened my laptop without realizing it, stared at the college application portal, and shut it just as quickly. I wasn't changing anything. She could follow whoever she wanted. I had my own sky to chase. Since we were already heading in different directions, there was no need to look back. My mom always said, people grow up when they stop expecting others to hold their hand. That kiss? Let's just pretend a stray dog bit me. When Emily called me that evening on video chat, my hands hesitated, but muscle memory answered the call. James, why aren't you here? Everyone's waiting on you to eat. Her tone was annoyed, like I was ruining her night. In the background, I heard a smooth male voice, Ryan's voice. Emily, is James still sulking because I showed up? Is this supposed to be some kind of tight-knit circle? The other girls giggled. Oh come on, we love having Ryan here. James is just jealous. He always throws a tantrum when another guy talks to Emily. I didn't say a word. Then Ryan's face appeared in the frame, way too close to hers. Emily, he said softly, if it makes things weird, I can leave. I don't want to cause any more drama. Emily grabbed his arm, her tone sharp. Don't leave. If James doesn't want to come, forget him. We're eating. She hung up before I could even reply. That was the last straw. I blocked her. For the first time in my life, I blocked Emily Carter. And yeah, it was because of Ryan Kim again. I couldn't remember when it started, maybe when Ryan transferred in, but ever since then, Emily had been different. She used to promise me she didn't like him. She'd look me in the eye and say, I'm just helping him out, James. He's got a rough home life. Everyone judges him. And I believed her. I really believed she cared about me. But over time, she started spending more and more time with him. She changed majors for him. She left me behind without blinking. And I'm the clown who thought I was the center of her world. I blocked her and every friend who tried to message me on her behalf. Then I packed my bag and headed to school to check in one last time before applications closed. When I arrived, the seat next to Emily's seat was taken by Ryan Kim, who looked at me like he'd won. Emily didn't even look my way. I found a seat next to Nathan Reed instead. While he talked about some ridiculous drama involving a broken watermelon, I felt a tap on my head. James, come out here, Emily said. I ignored her. She grabbed my shoulder. I'm serious. This is childish. Exactly, I snapped. So stop trying to patch things up. I'm done. She looked pissed. Fine. Be a baby. But don't cry about it later. Then, like she was trying to pretend we were still friends, she leaned in and said, it's the last day, James. Check your form. Don't mess it up. She looked like she wanted to say more, but Ryan walked up with his laptop. Emily, I need help fixing something on my application. Without hesitation, she went with him. Before she left, she pinched my cheek and said, don't forget to use the school computer if you didn't bring yours. She smiled like nothing had happened. I watched her go, heart cold, smile gone. I knew what she thought, that her vague reminder would guilt me into checking the form, realizing she'd switched, and instinctively following her. But not this time. I watched her hover around Ryan, giggling while adjusting his application. I turned to Nathan and said, let's get out of here. I needed air. And maybe, for the first time in my life, I needed space from Emily Carter. That evening, I followed Nathan out, pretending I was okay, pretending I didn't care, but inside, I was boiling over with 1,000 questions I'd never get answers to, the biggest one being, how could someone throw away a future we built together without even a conversation? The next few hours passed in a blur. I joined Nathan and a few others for dinner just to keep my mind off things, but every time someone laughed or mentioned the college entrance deadline, I felt a knife twist a little deeper in my chest. After dinner, somehow we ended up at this trendy new bar that had just opened downtown, and I wasn't in the mood, but I went anyway, because anything was better than going home and thinking about Emily Carter and Ryan Kim. I didn't realize until I stepped into the VIP room that it was Emily's celebration party too. Of course it was. Of course fate had to rub salt in the wound one more time before the clock hit midnight. When I walked in, I saw her across the room, dressed up like she didn't just crush someone's heart 2 days ago, surrounded by her little circle of friends and, naturally, Ryan Kim, sitting way too close to her. Our eyes met for a split second, and she froze, maybe surprised I even showed up. But she didn't say a word. Neither did I. We pretended we were strangers. That should have been easy, right? After all, she had already decided to go build a future with someone else. The night dragged on, full of dumb drinking games and forced laughter. I barely spoke. I barely moved. At one point, I got up to use the restroom, and that's when I overheard her talking in the hallway with one of her friends. "Just relax," her friend said. "You should tell him. It's cruel to let him believe he still matters." Emily snorted, "He knows. I even told him today to check his form. He's probably mad I didn't explain earlier, but come on, know him. He's stubborn but soft. He definitely changed it." I was stunned. Standing just around the corner, hearing her say with that smug certainty that I'd still follow her, like she owned me, like my dreams were hers to direct. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab her by the shoulders and ask, "When did you stop seeing me as a person and start treating me like a damn footnote in your love story?" I took a step back, but before I could leave, Emily walked out and spotted me. She stopped dead in her tracks. Her eyes went wide with guilt or maybe just surprise, and she motioned for her friend to leave. Then she grabbed my wrist like we were still close, like nothing had changed. "James," she said, her voice suddenly sugary, a little slurred, like she'd been drinking. "I tried to call you. You blocked me. That was mean. I even wanted to invite you here tonight, but you wouldn't answer." I looked at her with stone-cold silence. She didn't seem to care. Okay, don't be mad. Come on, are you still angry about the major thing? You know I didn't mean to hurt you. I didn't want drama, okay? And Ryan, he's not that important, don't get all twisted over that." Then, in that same breath, she leaned closer and whispered, "You still didn't check your form, right? You should really double-check. It's important." She said it like a dare, like she thought I'd crack. But I didn't even blink. Ryan's voice called her from down the hallway, and she turned to look, then turned back to me and sighed. "Don't be like this, James. Just check the form. Change it. Don't be stubborn." I didn't answer. She turned around and walked back, and I made my escape before she could pull me into another guilt trip. But as I turned the corner, Ryan was standing there, waiting like a hawk. "James," he said, smiling like he owned the whole damn bar, "I didn't mean to come between you two. She's just been kind to me, that's all." Then he reached out and patted my shoulder like we were friends. "No hard feelings, right?" Something in me snapped, and I shoved his hand off. "Don't touch me," I said. "You don't get to play innocent." He looked surprised, even a little hurt, like I had overreacted. "I'm just trying to be nice," he said, loud enough for people nearby to hear. That's when Emily came rushing over, looking annoyed. "James, why'd you push him? He was just being friendly. Stop making a scene." I looked at her like I didn't even recognize her anymore. "You want to play house with him? Fine. But don't drag me into your performance. I'm done." I turned and walked out without waiting for a reply. That night, when I got home, I deleted every message, every contact, every trace of Emily Carter from my phone. I thought I could sleep it off, but I was wrong. My mind raced all night, bouncing between memories of her laughing at me, mocking me, choosing Ryan Kim over our shared dream like it was no big deal. I didn't know which part hurt worse, the betrayal, the arrogance, or the fact that deep down, I still wanted to believe she cared. At exactly 11:55 p.m., 5 minutes before the application system closed, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, paralyzed. I didn't log in. I didn't change a thing. She could fly south for Ryan. I had my own sky, and I was going to reach it with or without her. Just as I was about to drift off, my phone buzzed. A call from an unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again. On the third call, I picked up, and of course, it was her. Emily Carter, drunk and giggly. "James, don't be mad, okay? Please. Change your major. University of Miami is beautiful. There's a beach. I'll even go surfing with you. Come on. Don't be so serious all the time." I stayed silent. Her tone softened even more. "You hate the cold. Caltech's in the north. You'll freeze, dummy. You always get sick in the winter. And if you still really want to see the ice world, I'll go with you during winter break. I promise." Her voice was light and playful, but something inside me cracked wide open. I asked her, point blank, "Emily, do you have anything honest to say to me?" There was a pause on her end. A real pause. Then she said, "Why are you asking? You know everything already, don't you? You've been mad at me all day. What's the point in talking about it now?" I closed my eyes. That was it. That was the moment I realized she would never admit what she did. Never take responsibility. Never apologize. It was all a game to her, and she still thought I'd come running if she tossed me a bone. I hung up without another word and powered off my phone. I didn't want to hear her voice ever again. The second hand on the clock ticked past midnight. The application system closed. There was no going back. I rolled over and tried to sleep, but my pillow was already soaked with silent tears. People always say the late-night hours make you the most vulnerable. I used to think that was just something dramatic people said to sound poetic. But that night, I understood. Because even though I told myself I was strong, that I had moved on, that I had my own future, her face still burned in my mind, every smile, every pout, every lie. I finally passed out sometime before dawn. When I woke up, it was noon the next day. I opened my phone and saw dozens of missed calls and messages from unfamiliar numbers. I ignored them until I saw a group chat notification. Someone had posted a screenshot from Ryan Kim's Instagram story posted at 1 a.m. The caption said, "Grateful for this moment." The picture? A hotel bed, white sheets, and someone clearly asleep next to him. Just a sliver of her face was visible. But I didn't need the full image. I knew that face. I knew it better than anyone. It was Emily. My chest clenched so hard I couldn't breathe. I scrolled down and saw the comments, heart emojis, people congratulating him, even some of Emily's friends laughing about how bold he was. Ryan's reply was smug and suggestive. I turned off the screen. My fingers were trembling. So while she was begging me to change my major with that sweet, drunk voice, she was in bed with him. That's when I knew, without a doubt, I made the right choice. If I had changed my application, I'd be the biggest joke in the next 4 years. I had finally escaped. And nothing, not even her tears, not even her memories, was going to pull me back in. I stared at that hotel picture for a long time, not because I wanted to torture myself, but because a part of me still couldn't believe it, like my brain was waiting for some logical explanation, some twist that would make everything okay, but there wasn't one, there never was. It was just her, lying in a hotel bed with Ryan Kim while calling me like nothing happened, and suddenly all those memories, our late-night study sessions, the promises we whispered under the covers at sleepovers, the kiss under the stars when she turned 18, just collapsed like a house of cards in my chest, and I couldn't breathe for a moment, not from sadness anymore, but from something colder, sharper, like disgust and disappointment had fused into one final realization. She never really chose me, she just assumed I'd always be there, like some permanent placeholder she could fall back on, and now that I wasn't, now that I had walked away, she was finally showing her true face. So I got up, threw on a hoodie, and left my room without even brushing my teeth. I needed air, space, distance, anything but that damn phone screen. And yet, life wasn't done screwing with me, because later that afternoon, as I sat at a noodle place trying to stomach lunch I didn't even taste, my cousin from Santa Monica called and said, "Yo, you still coming to crash at my place for a few weeks?" Flights are cheap right now, and Mom said she'd be happy to see you, and I don't know why I said yes, maybe because I needed to get away, maybe because staying in Lakeview City felt like standing in the ruins of a war I didn't sign up for, so I booked a last-minute ticket, packed light, and didn't tell anyone, not even Nathan, not even my mom until I landed, and when the plane touched down that evening and the sea breeze hit my face, it was like something inside me finally exhaled for the first time in months, like the sky was telling me it was okay to move on, and that night, sitting by the beach with grilled shrimp skewers in one hand and a coconut in the other, I opened my phone and posted a single photo on my private story: sunset, ocean, peace with no caption, and I didn't expect anything from it, but I woke up the next morning to find chaos in the group chat. Apparently someone had screenshotted it and sent it to Emily, because my phone was full of missed calls again, all from numbers I didn't save, and then a voice message came in from her, slurred, slow, and way too familiar. James, you really went to Santa Monica without me? You promised we'd go together. The sea's too big without you, and I deleted it before it could finish because I didn't want to hear lies laced with nostalgia anymore. I didn't want to be that guy who held on to half promises while she made full memories with someone else, but she didn't stop there. The next day she called my cousin's phone, and the idiot actually handed it to me while I was brushing my teeth. And before I could say anything she was already rambling. Everyone's here at the airport except you, James. Why aren't you here? Are you joking? Your mom said you stayed at your cousin's. Did he come to Lakeview? And I sighed and said slowly, no, Emily, I'm at his house in Santa Monica, and the silence on the other end was brutal. I could practically hear her thoughts crumbling, until Ryan's voice popped up in the background like always. Wait, check this, he actually did post it last night. And she cursed under her breath because I forgot she couldn't see my story anymore, since I had her blocked, and then she snapped back on the line and said, James Walker, don't regret this, and hung up, and I laughed bitterly because she said it like I hadn't already spent the past 6 years slowly letting my entire future revolve around her, like I hadn't already given her the best parts of me, like she still believed she had that power over me, and I told myself right then, if she wants to play that game, then fine. I'll play it better, so I went all in, hanged my look, hit the gym with my cousin, swapped my glasses for contacts, shaved the mop off my head and started learning how to actually dress myself for once, and when I posted a beach selfie 2 weeks later in a button-up and shorts, hair slicked back, with a caption that said, New Horizon, no regrets, the comment section exploded. People from school who had ignored me were suddenly noticing, classmates demanding me, whoa, you look fire. And for once I didn't feel like a side character in someone else's story. I felt like I was finally becoming my own protagonist, and then came the moment I didn't expect. One of Emily's friends, probably not realizing they were still blocked, posted a message in the class group chat, something like, James Walker really glowed up FR, and someone else added, bro turned into a whole main character, and of course Ryan had to be the one to say, but that's all filters lol. But Nathan clapped back and dropped the raw live photo I had sent him earlier. And then silence. Pure silence. Even our homeroom teacher jumped in and said, James always had potential, sometimes all it takes is the right environment, and I didn't even reply because for once I didn't have to defend myself, everyone else did it for me, and just like that, Emily and Ryan went quiet online, like their whole Miami trip had suddenly ended early for no reason. And I kept getting DMs asking if I was going to Caltech for sure, if I was really majoring in aviation, and I replied to all of them with one sentence. Never changed it, and when my acceptance letter finally came, when I held that thick envelope in my hand, I cried, not for her, not for the past, but for that 10-year-old boy who used to stare at the sky and ask why his dad gave his life chasing it, because now I had the chance to find that answer for myself, and I had made it there on my own. No more shadows, no more chasing someone who never looked back, just me and the sky. And on the day I flew back home for one night before move-in, something weird happened. As I stepped out of the airport with my suitcase, I ran into them, Emily and Ryan returning from their trip, and we locked eyes, all three of us, frozen like a deleted scene from a movie that never made it to the final cut, and Emily, looking shocked, said, James the First didn't even recognize you, and I just nodded and walked past her without a word, heading straight to where my mom was waiting. And just as I reached the car, she ran after me and called out, Are you really not going to our graduation dinner? And my mom, fierce as ever, stepped in between us and said coldly, No. We have more important things to do. His grandmother's sick and we're not wasting time on fake celebrations, and that was that. We drove away, me watching the city blur past the window, wondering how something so close could feel so distant now, and later that week, after visiting my grandma and agreeing to accompany her to Washington, D.C. for surgery, I found myself packing for Caltech, realizing I had finally cut the cord, and yet Emily still hadn't given up. She called from a different number that night, and when I answered, thinking it was a hospital update, she screamed, "James, you're really not coming? You're just going to leave me like this?" And I just said quietly, "You left me first, Emily. You just didn't notice," and I ended the call, blocked the number, and promised myself this: no more chasing the past, no more waiting to be chosen, no more being second to anyone. I was James Walker now, and I was finally taking off. I thought once I got to Caltech, everything would click into place like some perfect coming-of-age script where the guy who got his heart shattered finds purpose, new friends, and peace under the Californian sun, and for a while, it felt like that might be true, because from the moment I stepped onto campus, things moved fast. My dorm was buzzing with energy, upperclassmen helped me carry my bags. The guy assigned as my roommate turned out to be chill as hell, the kind that cracked open 2 sodas before even asking if I drank, and even though I was thousands of miles from Lakeview City and everything tied to Emily Carter, she still managed to find a way to wedge herself into my new chapter, because just 3 days after moving in, while I was sweating through my first gym session in years, she called again, this time from her mom's phone, acting like she didn't betray me, like we were just in a silly fight and all she had to do was wave the white flag and I'd come running back like always. Her voice was softer than usual, almost shy. "James, I tried to find you today. Your aunt said you moved in early, but when I got to the campus I couldn't find your name anywhere. What's going on?" And at first, I didn't even know how to respond, because she actually sounded confused, like she really hadn't figured it out yet, like it never crossed her mind that I didn't follow her to Miami. So I let the silence hang for a second, then said it as clearly and slowly as possible, "Emily, I'm not at the same school as you. I never changed my application. I've been at Caltech since day one." And when she laughed nervously, thinking I was joking, I added, "You assumed I'd change my future for you, but I didn't, and I won't." And just then my roommate yelled from the hallway, "Yo James, we're heading to the dumpling spot, let's go," and his thick northeastern accent drifted into the call, and I could hear her heart drop over the phone, her voice cracking as she whispered, "No. You're kidding, right? I thought you said you saw my change. I told you to double-check," and I sighed, "Yeah, you told me, but you never told me the truth, and I'm not your backup plan anymore, Emily," then hung up without waiting for a reply, and I thought that would be the end of it, but I should have known better, because 2 nights later, after a long lab orientation, I walked out of the academic center and ran straight into her, Emily Carter, standing there with her hair down, wearing a fitted white dress and trench coat like she just stepped off a plane and was still clinging to the idea that grand gestures fix broken trust. She was holding a laptop, out of breath, clearly tired from travel, but her eyes lit up the moment she saw me and she rushed over, blurting out, "I have something to say, James, just give me a few minutes," and I looked at her like a stranger. The girl I once adored now felt like a glitch from a past timeline I didn't want to revisit. And she must have sensed it because she added quickly, "We can talk right here. I know you probably don't want to be seen with me," and when she said that, I almost told her to leave, but something in her expression, maybe desperation, maybe guilt, kept me rooted, so I stayed still, arms crossed, and let her talk, and what came next shocked me, because the first words out of her mouth were, "That girl who gave you the love letter, she's not serious about you," and I almost laughed out loud, because it was so petty, so beneath her usual grace, and when I asked, "You flew across the country to tell me that?" she stammered, "No, I mean, yes, but not just that. I thought you'd change with me, James, I thought you'd go wherever I go," and that's when I realized, she never once considered what I wanted. It was always her dream, her plan, her control, so I cut her off. "Emily, do you even know why I applied to Caltech in the first place?" And she blinked, confused, and said, "Because of me," and I nodded slowly. Then said, "That's exactly the problem. You thought everything I did was because of you, but my dream started way before you ever mattered like that. My dad died testing an aircraft when I was 10, and I've been trying to understand what kind of person risks everything for the sky. I didn't choose Caltech for you, I chose it for him, and for me." And she went quiet, really quiet, like for the first time she was seeing me as someone separate from her orbit, and she whispered, "You never told me any of that," and I said, "You never asked," and then I thanked her, genuinely, because when my dad passed, her family was there for me, she was there, and I would always be grateful for that, but I also made it clear whatever bond we had, she broke it the moment she chose to leave me out of her decision, and it wasn't about Ryan Kim or the college itself, it was about trust, respect, and all the silent promises she shattered when she laughed about how I'd follow her anyway. And before she could respond, rain started falling, like some cheap metaphor for everything we never said, and I turned to leave, not looking back, while my roommate later told me she stood there in the storm until morning, drenched and shaking but too stubborn to leave, and still, I didn't go to her, I didn't call, because I was done trying to fix something that had already burned down, but a few days later, her mom called, not to scold me, but to beg, James, please talk to Emily, she hasn't been eating. She's had a high fever for days, she even talked about reapplying next year just to get into Caltech, and I listened quietly, then said calmly, tell her not to do something stupid because I won't wait for her, and I meant it, every word. I was done waiting for the version of her I had imagined, the one who would have walked beside me instead of ahead, and from what I heard later, she did go back to school eventually, convinced by her grandparents, but she kept sending packages to my dorm every break, me favorite snacks, handwritten notes, even the scarf I once gave her, all quietly left with no name, and I didn't return any of them, not because I was angry, but because the past didn't deserve space in my present. And then something changed. Olivia Yu, the girl who sent me those ridiculously charming love letters and actually meant them, became someone I started looking forward to seeing between classes. Her laugh was easy, her energy contagious, and the more time I spent with her, the more I realized what it meant to be chosen, to be seen, not as someone's backup plan, but as someone worth chasing. And during winter break, when we went on a snowy campus date, sledding down the hill near the dorms, she tripped and grabbed my arm and we both fell, laughing, out of breath, and before I could stop myself, I kissed her, just once, and she smiled into it, and I swear, in that moment, I forgot Emily Carter even existed, and apparently, so did she, because from that day on, she never came back, no more messages, no more visits, nothing but silence, and I didn't mourn it, because that silence wasn't painful, Anna Marie, it was closure. I thought that after Olivia and I kissed, things would settle into something sweet and predictable, but life never really works that way, especially not mine, because just when I started feeling like the past had finally loosened its grip on me, it came crashing back harder than ever, not with words or apologies, but with silence so loud it buzzed in my chest, because I noticed one day Emily Carter had disappeared, not in a dramatic fireworks kind of way, but like she had quietly erased herself from every corner of my life. The group chat she used to dominate had no more messages from her, mutual friends stopped bringing her name up, and I didn't realize how much space she still took up in my mind until she was completely gone from it, like a puzzle piece I kept shoving into a picture that was never hers to fit in the first place. And yet, even with her absence, I found myself thinking about her in moments I least expected, like when Olivia handed me hot cocoa after class and my mind flicked back to Emily once yelling at me for forgetting to wear gloves in winter, or when Olivia surprised me with that space documentary and I remembered how Emily used to zone out when I talked about black holes and propulsion systems, and I hated that those memories lingered, not because I wanted her back, but because I hated how deeply she'd carved herself into me without permission. And still, I pushed forward, focused on my classes, hit the gym, even started tutoring a few underclassmen in aerospace fundamentals, and every night I came back to a dorm that didn't carry the weight of history, just a soft voice and warm presence waiting in Olivia, who never asked for more than what I could give, never tried to rewrite my past or demand my future. She just stayed, quietly, confidently, and I think that's what finally let me breathe. But that didn't stop the rumors from trickling in. Someone saw Emily skipping lectures back in Miami, someone else mentioned she declined her offer to join the student council, and then, during a late-night FaceTime with Nathan, he said, "Dude, I heard she's trying to apply for a transfer to Caltech," and I blinked, nearly choking on my protein shake, because I hadn't heard a single word from her in months, hadn't even seen her name flash across a screen, and yet here she was again, circling back like gravity itself wouldn't let her drift too far. And when I asked him where he heard that, he just shrugged. Group chat gossip, but apparently she tanked her winter exams on purpose so her GPA would reset after transferring, and part of me wanted to scoff at how stupid that was, but another part, a much smaller, more bitter part, wasn't surprised at all, because if there was one thing Emily Carter couldn't stand, it was not being in control, and maybe me slipping out of her orbit drove her crazy enough to try and bend the system again, just like she thought she could bend me, but it was too late. I was already in a different chapter, and Even though I knew she'd eventually reappear, I didn't expect it to happen the way it did, because during the spring career fair, I was walking Olivia back to her dorm after we'd both volunteered at the aerospace booth, and right before I said goodnight, a familiar voice echoed down the sidewalk, hers, soft, out of breath, but unmistakably hers. "James, can we talk?" And Olivia turned, surprised, glancing between us like she'd just walked into a scene from someone else's movie, and Emily looked rough, not in a dramatic way, but the kind of tired that shows when someone's been dragging their heart through too many sleepless nights. She wore no makeup, just a hoodie and jeans, her hair pulled into a loose braid that looked like it had given up halfway, and I should have said no, should have walked away, but I nodded once and told Olivia I'd catch up later, and when she was gone, Emily exhaled and sat down on the edge of the fountain, patting the space next to her like I was still supposed to know what that meant. I didn't sit, just stood there with my hands in my pockets as she stared at the water and whispered, "I didn't transfer, I couldn't, my parents wouldn't let me, but I came anyway, took a week off to visit, I had to see you," and I stayed silent, because I knew whatever came next would be some mix of guilt and performance, and sure enough, she added, "I've been thinking a lot lately about everything and I realize I hurt you more than I ever admitted, and I'm sorry, James." Really, and the funny thing is, I believed her for the first time. She wasn't defensive, wasn't trying to spin it or pretend it was all a misunderstanding. She was just raw, her eyes glossy but not crying, her voice steady but small, and maybe if this were 6 months ago, that would have wrecked me, but now it felt like closure, like watching the last scene of a movie I used to love but no longer related to, and I finally said, "I used to think you were the only one who ever really understood me, but I was wrong, you only understood the version of me that existed for you," and that hit her hard. I saw it in the way her shoulders dropped, in the way her hands clenched, but she didn't argue, just nodded and said, "I get it, I think I just didn't want to be alone, and when I saw Orion pulling away too, I panicked, I didn't know how to be by myself," and I replied, "That's the difference between us, I had to learn to be alone years ago," and after a long pause, she looked up and asked, "Do you hate me?" and I didn't know how to answer, because hate requires energy, and I didn't have any left for her, so I told her the truth, "No, I don't hate you, I just don't need you anymore," and the silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was final, and when I turned to leave, she didn't follow, didn't call out, just sat there in the shadow of a place she never belonged to, watching me walk back into a life that had no space left for her. And that night, Olivia didn't ask questions, just slipped her hand into mine and rested her head on my shoulder while we watched a documentary about deep space, and somewhere between the static and starlight, I felt the last thread between Emily and me snap cleanly in two, not with anger or regret, but with something far better, peace. By the time senior year rolled around, everything felt so far away from the world I used to live in that sometimes I'd lie awake at night wondering if all of it had even happened or if I had just dreamed the version of myself who used to follow Emily Carter around like gravity, like she was the sun and I was just some dumb planet begging for warmth. But the reality was this: I had changed, fully, completely. Not just the way I looked or dressed, not just the confidence in my voice or the strength in my steps, but deep down, something inside me had hardened and matured, like the boy who used to mistake loyalty for love had finally grown up and learned to stand on his own, and that wasn't because of some dramatic revelation or fairy tale redemption, it was because I had lived through the fire and crawled out the other side, burned but breathing, and it was people like Olivia, people who stayed, people who never asked me to shrink or chase or guess, who reminded me that I deserved more than to be someone's fallback plan. And the funny thing is, when the world stopped revolving around Emily, everything else started falling into place. My senior project got accepted by a national aerospace competition, my professor started mentoring me for PhD programs, Olivia and I published a paper together, and suddenly, life wasn't about waiting for someone to choose me, it was about choosing myself, again and again, and it wasn't until I came back home for winter break to visit my mom and help with some family stuff that I accidentally crossed paths with Emily one last time, at the airport of all places, her suitcase dragging behind her, hair tied up, earbuds in, walking like she had somewhere to be, like she had her life together, and maybe she did, I don't know, because the moment she saw me, she froze, her whole expression tightening, and for a second I thought she might turn around or pretend not to see me, but she didn't. She walked up slowly and said, "James," like it was still a name that belonged to her, and I nodded once, polite but distant, the way you acknowledge someone who once meant something and now means nothing at all, and we stood there for a second, both of us clutching handles of suitcases going in opposite directions, and she said, "You look good," to which I replied, thanks, and then she hesitated, just long enough for me to know something was coming, something she'd been carrying for a while, and she said, I got into a lab internship, in Houston, it's aviation related, and I smiled, genuinely, and said, that's great, because despite everything, I didn't want her to fail, I just wanted her to stop being the center of my world, and I had already achieved that, so when she said, I was hoping I'd run into you just to say I'm sorry again, I replied, you already did, and when she said, I mean it now, I didn't say anything, because I knew she did. And that was enough, and just like that, we parted ways, no long speeches, no lingering eye contact, just two people who used to be everything to each other, now nothing more than a mutual footnote, and as I boarded my flight back to school, I stared out the window and thought about how wild it was that this whole story, this whole chapter of my life, had started because of a volunteer form, a kiss under the stars, and a girl who thought I'd never leave her orbit, and now here I was, with a future of my own making. A woman beside me who chose me without conditions, and a dream that had nothing to do with chasing someone else, and everything to do with chasing the sky, and when the plane took off, climbing higher and higher through the clouds, I thought about my dad, about how proud he'd be, and about that little boy who used to build paper planes in the kitchen and dream of rockets, and I whispered under my breath, we made it, because we did, and there would always be people like Emily Carter in this world, people who walk in and think they're your forever. Just because they were your first, but what they don't realize is that sometimes, the best kind of love isn't the kind that burns brightest, but the kind that stays lit through the darkest nights, and as I landed back at Caltech, back to Olivia waiting with 2 coffees and a smile that made my chest feel like home, I knew this was it, this was my real beginning, and nothing behind me could compare to what was ahead, because I had finally stepped out of someone else's story, and started writing my own.